Life's Learning Curve, episode 51. Not far from my favorite running track at Carpentersville Middle School, here in the mid-midwest, it's Life's Learning Curve. We're a podcast where we use stories, true stories, to help us focus our lives a bit. We share true stories of how we became the best us, and we're still trying to become the best us. That's the whole idea. Find us at lifeslearningcurve.org. I'm Paul Hardt, I'm your host, and I'm glad you're here with us today. I think we have quite a treat for you. Spoiled. A lot of us are spoiled with the common conveniences we have right here in present day, modern day America.
Hey, what about you?
Me?
Yeah. Are you spoiled?
If you asked me a week ago, I would have said, no, not me. No.
Well, how about now?
Okay, maybe. I'd say so now. We have an episode today about a lineman, a weather event, and finally connecting my neighbors in my neighborhood, all because of a common inability to electrically connect ourselves to the world. So let's get going. Sebastian.
Life's Learning Curve. I'm Paul Hardt, episode The Power Outage. Stand by.
This all started about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that back. Very, I'd say very subconscious for me. So deep you didn't know it was even happening. But each night, before falling asleep, I used to source, and still do, YouTube on my TV, the bigger screen, looking for something. So many choices on YouTube, so much content. Finding something for me, I was looking to reconnect. And I guess, pretty much if you're listening to this podcast, you realize I always am looking. I often need to be reminded of that escapism, that solo feeling, the other me. Throughout my life, I've been always drawn to things like train tracks, but only the ones that are heading west or south, but never the other directions. I don't know why. All my life, I have shared that fact with very few people, but I am sharing it with you today. Perhaps I had a past as a homeless person, a southbound man in search of a love and life near the train tracks. Maybe, who knows? I have had certain songs, certain books, certain visual elements. When I see them, they trigger that theme or emotion within me. So, okay, there I was in bed, looking around YouTube, having those visceral thoughts that you consider or you think about just before you fall asleep. For me, I've had a lifetime of these thoughts, so they're not something that just, came about recently, I'm thinking things, no. Yet each night, searching YouTube, the same song came up in my suggested music queue. And each night, I played that song. Coming from a rock and roll drumming background, I was kind of puzzled why this mainstream song drew me. It was a song of an everyday man, a hard day-by-day worker. The song's writer was a man named, and still is, he's still around, Jimmy Webb. This song's lyrics, Jimmy Webb had explained that this had come to him when he was driving through a rural section of Oklahoma, heading westward on a straight road into the setting sun. He drove past a seemingly endless line of telephone poles, each looking exactly the same, pole by pole. Then in the distance, he noticed the silhouette of a solitary lineman on top of a pole, hooked up to a portable phone. He described it as the picture of loneliness. Jimmy Webb then put himself on top of that pole and he put that phone in his own hand as he considered what that lineman would be saying into the receiver. The song he conceived was called Wichita Lineman by Jimmy Webb and beautifully communicated by artist Glenn Campbell. Now, copyright, as always, forbids me to play it, but please look it up. It's going to make a lot more sense if you look the song up on Spotify or Pandora or even YouTube. Wichita Lineman. Listen to the lyrics. So Jimmy Webb wrote about an everyday guy, blue collar, every day. We see these people working everywhere. That's most of us. Working on the railroad, working on something electrical or a telephone wire or digging holes in the street. Now, Jimmy Webb took this guy, opened him up, and showed us, hey, look, there's this great soul, and there's this great aching, and this great loneliness inside this person. And you know what? We're all kind of like that. We all have this capacity for these huge feelings. Every night, I still find that song, and I feel the instrumentation, the strings, the instruments kind of wash over me. And I feel that lonely lineman's quest for an improved life. Favorite lyric in this song? And I need you more than want you. And I want you for all time. It's a very creative way to express unconditional love. You know, a while back, my girlfriend Charlie and I were on vacation in Florida, and we had met this other couple, Diane and Bob, just about our age, who coincidentally was a talented, experienced career lineman. Heard that song in my head every time I talked to Bob. And he had spent his life not only doing the best job he could as a lineman, but he had at long last met Diane, probably in their late 30s, early 40s. And they were good together. I imagined that it had been a long road for both of them. And I kind of saw kind of a coming home at last kind of thing. Love had conquered. I could visualize lineman Bob up a pole in the middle of nowhere. And I kind of liked that idea of the lineman finding true love in his life at middle age. Now here's where I want to tie this all together. Right now it's kind of been like me talking about alignment. It's like I'm in a car and I'm driving all over the highway, but I'm not getting anywhere. I want to tie the lineman idea into something that just happened a few days ago.
Here we go.
How many times in our lives have we seen an old movie or a classic picture, a photo, or a painting or something of an environment, of a setting that is something really basic and simple, yet so pure and clear that we actually say about it, hey, that's for me. I could live like that so easily.
Beautiful.
Or I could go there right now and live. Or I wish I could live back then, like this picture shows. Think about that. No cell phones, no traffic, no frantic pace, no ringing chaos, just simple peace and quiet. You know? Sometimes living our day-to-day lives unknowingly, we have become spoiled. See, I thought I was living a fairly, simple life 4 days ago. But something happened that realigned my thinking. And right here in the mid-Midwest, August brings us really heavy humidity. It's happened my whole life. And late afternoon storms, sometimes dangerous storms, sometimes thunderstorms, sometimes just rain. It all dynamically begins to brew up as the day continues in August. And these storms cross the Iowa plains, and then the jet stream pushes them, encourages them into the mid-Midwest and heads our way. Well, we had this happen 3 days in a row. Now that's kind of a novelty, but 3 days in a row we had some dangerous storms come through. The days were hot, sunny, 95-degree days, a lot of sun, and they changed. They morphed into these really bad, ominous, low-hanging black clouds in the late afternoon. On the first day, on day one, tornado sirens alerted us to take shelter. We did.
Whoa.
Quite simply, night one brewed a warm, hot, violent, and pouring, driving rain as tornadoes did touch down, but they skirted around our town, and the communities surrounding us got the worst of it. Besides flattening the plants in the yard and some small trees, we escaped that potential confrontation. However, day two, it was the wrath of Mother Nature. that brought its
Superstorm.
wrath down on my mid-midwestern town.
Wrath.
The humid, hazy sun gave way in the late afternoon once again to budding late afternoon storms, which brewed quite quickly. High upper atmospheric winds pushed easterly off the plains once again as this warm, moist air evaporated up into the mix, brewing another serious batch of fast-moving, tenuous storms. This time, there were no sirens to warn us, but I did have my cell phone, and my cell phone radar showed that there was some major storms synthesizing, coming together directly on top of my town. A microburst of humid pre-rain soaked and high wind shears dropped down on my town quickly. As Charlie and I peered out the upper window, the winds picked up violently and a loud thud
What was that?
hit the roof and made the entire house shudder.
Okay, we're going to the basement.
Charlie commanded.
Now.
She was right. We scooped up our dogs and we headed down the stairs, but not before the lights flickered once and then went out entirely. The wind blew furiously, and a transformer in the back of my yard started to hum loudly, louder. It lit up as if it had unleashed the power of the sun itself, and a low frequency of unusual voltage hummed and buzzed until a loud pop put out our lights for good. Now, on our way to the basement, I witnessed an entire large limb of a tree just tear off this tree and go flying down this tree as if it was, a feather. This was bigger than a storm front moving past. It was a microburst. Pre-rain soaked high wind shears dropping down on my town. So about every 7 years or so, we have a weather event like this, a pretty violent one. It's not uncommon, but it's always quite disturbing, and you hope it doesn't happen. Your safety is out of your own hands. There's not a lot you can do to help yourself except go to the basement, find a corner and hunker down. All you can do is try to make good choices and hope for the best. We emerged from the blackness of our basement to see outlines of damage out our windows.
Look at that.
The remnants of air conditioning still lingered in the house. As I watched the storm system finally pass, my adrenaline was flowing frantically. But finally, when Mother Nature calmed everything down again, I immediately did something. I exited the back door of my house, and in my backyard, I saw a torn down main power line, which had arced and hummed and burned until the power had ultimately shut off, either by itself or blown out somewhere else. Now, I live in a hill, and as far as I could see, there was no power in any directions. No houses, no businesses.
No power.
The stoplights were flashing, perhaps for miles in all directions. That down power line meant one thing to me. This was not going to be a quick fix. It might be 24 hours. It might be longer. I realized that tornadoes and hurricanes do much worse damage and affect entire regions. And I know I'm just talking about a small neighborhood in my town. I do not wish bad weather upon anyone. However, my situation was really about something else. It doesn't sound like it, but this episode is not really about this storm. It's about what I discovered about people and our placement in time right now, in the time we live. Still full of adrenaline, I decided to go check on our neighbors and also negotiate and try and walk down the debris field that once was our street. I was surprised to see the last seconds of a sunset in the west, as most of the clouds had passed that quickly to the east. The storm had gone on to interfere with the Chicago suburbs. Now, my neighbors, Randy and Denise, nice people, they were all right, but they both remarked about how my backyard lit up as that transformer blew. It illuminated with this bright white light as the transformer finally popped. Without saying it out loud, we all knew that this was going to be a long outage, and we even joked,
Now what are we going to do without TV and internet? Talk to each other?
We smiled and laughed, but quietly realized our dependence on all things in which you have to plug in had been cut off, removed. I realized that most things I do these days in business and in podcasting revolves around the use of a computer. Wait a minute. A refrigerator. I need a refrigerator too. And the air conditioning. It keeps out the humidity, keeps the house cool on the 95-degree days. And the TV, I guess, for entertainment. The internet. And I can't access my car because my garage is disattached from the house, and I can only open the garage with a remote, and I have no power.
No other access.
Wait a minute. Not even a fan would be able to blow and move the air around. I did not even know it yet, but we would be without electricity for 50 hours. Why didn't I buy that generator last spring? Why wasn't I more prepared for something like this? Post-sunset, I checked in with Charlie and the dogs. They were doing okay. They were just in the dark. And I took a flashlight and my cell phone. It was dark outside now, and I ventured carefully further down the pitch-black neighborhood block.
All right, here we go.
What I saw kind of amused me in a way. As I passed each house, I would see a random neighbor poke their heads out of the front door, squinting, just like the groundhog does on February 2nd, coming out from the hole, kind of what's going on out there. Emerging from a long dark winter to see what's up. People exited their houses in a slow, step-by-step manner, scanning up and down, left and right. And more importantly,
You live on the corner.
they spoke to one another. They spoke to me. Perhaps for the first time. That night on my block, I talked to people that I had never spoken with, but I had seen them fly by in their cars every day, maybe giving a wave. At long last, neighbors had time. Time for one another. Funny, everyone knew me. They recognized me and they knew where we lived, on the street, on the block, but we'd never spoken. I recorded parts of my nighttime neighborhood walk.
Nighttime. Neighborhood. Walk.
Okay, the power's out. Looks like everywhere. Okay. I'm walking down the street. I'm seeing people come out of their houses.
Yeah, it's quite a storm.
Okay. All the lights are on. There's a few solar lights on
Wow.
properties around here, illuminating sidewalks and things. Not too bad. Hey, are you guys okay? You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm working on the carburetor swap, so I'm using my car headlights to see.
Hang in there, guys.
Yeah, you too. See ya.
But then I saw a light up ahead, and as I walked farther down the block, I still felt that humidity, and the nighttime heat hung heavy, and sweat was beginning to drench my clothes. So back to my recorded walk. Whoa, over there, there's an entire house fully lit. But then I saw a light up ahead, and as I walked farther down the block, I still felt that humidity, and the nighttime heat hung heavy, and sweat was beginning to drench my clothes. So back to my recorded walk. Whoa, over there, there's an entire house fully lit. Okay, there's one house that's lit, that's weird. All the lights are on. Okay, the air conditioner's humming. I can hear it. I can hear it, yeah. Wait a minute. 3 guys stood on the street holding cans of beer. Curious, I approached them. How's it going, guys? I'm Paul from up the street. You still have your lights on.
Yeah, hi, my name's Joel. This is Bill.
Hey.
Steve.
Hi.
I got this generator last year. My wife said that's a waste of money, but she's pretty happy about it right now.
Hey, tell me, what kind of generator powers an entire house?
Mine runs on propane. It's about 10,000 watts. It's got this switch. If your power goes out, you just flip the switch and the generator comes on.
Transfer switch.
Transfer switch, that's it, yeah. So if the power goes out, I just flip the switch on the generator.
This was beginning to sound like a advertisement for generators. It's not. But I really wanted to know, now that I was in this crisis of no electricity, how this guy had achieved the miracle of electricity. And inside his front window of his house, I saw his kids playing video games, the TV's on, all the lights were on, and they were using tablets and things. Outside, the four of us guys stood there in the dark. Three of the guys held beers. The man's wife came out and took one look at us and said,
"What is this, King of the Hill?"
Yep.
"Yep." Mm-hmm. We all kind of laughed and broke it up. On my way back up the street, I strongly considered getting a generator when all this was over. Fred. Fred was a neighborhood man in his 30s, and I knew him. I came upon Fred. He was standing in the center of his front lawn facing his house, just standing there. He was, I could tell, frazzled. Yeah, I said frazzled. Fred asked me something very directly. He asked me for help. "What do you think I should do? That big tree from my front yard punctured a hole in my roof. Water's pouring in. What do you think? What would you do?" I got it. I understood where he was coming from. It is very hard to solve some intense problems when it is your problem. This was not my problem, and the solution seemed simple.
Well, should I take the branch off and leave so an insurance adjuster can come out and see it, and cover the damages? I can't get through to my homeowner's insurance, though, right now. All the lines are all jammed.
Fred, I'm not an insurance adjuster, you know that, but I've had some experience with a downpour during a re-shingling project about 10 years back in my own house.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, I'd shoot video, I'd shoot pictures as much as you can with your phone, and then get a tarp, use one of your tarps to cover up the hole for now.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right, thanks. I don't know, I'm so out of it after this.
I understand, Fred.
I left Fred only to witness another home next door to him with its electrical meter hanging diagonally off the side of the house, as if somebody had hung on it and ripped it off the side of the house, but it was a fallen tree limb. Matter of fact, it was half of a tree that tore it off. Cars in the block were also damaged by tree limbs and flying debris. Garbage was littered everywhere. The damage in our little mid-midwest subdivision went on for blocks. One house after the other had been damaged in some way or another. However, I'll tell you what, I was grateful.
Wow. I'll tell you what, after seeing all this stuff out here today, I don't care about my stuff. It's a miracle that Charlie or our dogs are alive and they're okay. I'm glad that everybody's okay.
After that, I phoned my son to see if he was all right. It went to voicemail. Now, my daughter lives in Texas, and Texas has its own weather anomalies, and at this particular time, everything was okay in Texas. During my walk, I came across 3 more neighbors. 3 of them. They all stopped and pulled out their smartphones to play back some video they had shot of my backyard exploding into white transformer light. Right in my backyard. Apparently there was a show as I was running to the basement. Although, in the back of my mind, TVs, computers, tablets, and smartphones would not be accessible. Plain and simple, it seems our life's pace and all of our electronics has kept us from interacting or socializing sometimes. It was the excessive humidity and the unusual warmth that seemed to worry each person the most. Immediately, I began scanning, looking for electric trucks. Where's my lineman? I need that Wichita Lineman, that guy. When I was a child, we knew all of our neighbors by name, and they knew us. We had block parties, we had cookouts, we had celebrations of weddings and anniversaries and graduations that we shared with one another. I kind of hate to say this, but back then our lives were, well, simpler, of course, but we had more of a community feel. Everyone was kind of in this with each other. If you skinned your knee when I was growing up and you were off your block in a different street, Mrs. O'Brien would come over and she'd clean you up and she'd shoot a phone call home to alert your parents. It took a community to raise us all back then. Everybody was doing that. What happened? What happened to that community sense? Mother Nature had just provided a violent, windy microburst, a power outage, and on that particular extra humid, hot summer's night, some of our neighbors were in need of help or direction. That weather event was what it took to assemble our community, neighbors. A weather event brought people out from their uber comfortable, technology-laden homes. Yet, this community feel, the evening's community solidarity and unity should have happened consistently months or years ago. But probably it should have happened for a much happier reason. That reason? We needed to get out. We needed to get out and meet our neighbors, be with our neighbors and their families. Look, I know we all are different, but in a sense we are all pretty much the same as well. So what is it that keeps us inside our houses, hidden away from our community? I don't actually know. I could make a lot of guesses, but my opinion is that we're busy. We're so busy. We are so busy being busy these days that we come home from work and we let technology entertain us, and instead of sharing ourselves or sharing quality time or sharing stories of our day at work or having family time, community time, time for the neighbors. Finally, normalcy was restored. By who? By that lonely, stoic, grim lineman and his team as they rewired that main line in my backyard. And as he finally finished and he powered us back up, his stoic face changed. His face kind of relaxed. It didn't smile. And he looked at me and quietly he said, "Power's on." The house came back to electric life once again. And I knew I had to suck it up and admit that I had become spoiled by every common convenience which I had taken for granted over the years. Too many to list. All I can tell you is this. There's this lineman, a great soul, and he feels others aching for his talent, needing his skills. And he carries this great loneliness inside of him. You know, we're all kind of like that. We all have the capacity for these huge feelings. So what's our takeaway? What did we learn? What did I learn? We seem to have lost, or we are losing, our connections with one another. And that's a terrible thing to lose. Without sounding like a relic from the good old days, I'll just say, as I get older, I feel more and more like it is my responsibility to share and retell some of these stories that have been passed down over the years. Maybe revive Sunday dinners for the family and friends. And it seems like there's very little of that happening these days in the American family. Now, this was pointed out to me by my good friend Clay Greger out of Key West, Florida, way back in 2006. He kind of saw it happening then. He was right. Listen, we all have this great capacity to share, to love, to learn, to listen, and share our lives with one another, family, friends. Just don't wait for a bad storm to unify your family and your neighborhood. Do it now. Talk, take some time, share, love, have a laugh, communicate. Oh, and by the way, get yourself a generator. I did. For life's learning curve. We're back at full power. I'm Paul Hardt.
Subscribe to Life's Learning Curve at lifeslearningcurve.org and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Podchaser. Episode 51, The Power Outage of Life's Learning Curve Podcast, was put together by producer Sebastian T. Dog, executive producer Paul Hardt, technical director Chuck Lyons, editor Paul Richards, audio and sound as always Riley Hart, production manager Butch Greger, studio equipment manager Don Compton. Participants in this episode today, Clay Greger, Charlie Verlaire, Denise and Randy, the neighbors. Hey, find us on Facebook and listen to us just about everywhere podcasts are heard. Visit our website too, lifeslearningcurve.org, and subscribe. Listen to a show, read a blog, or shoot us an email. We always are happy to hear from you. This episode has imaginative voice recreations. To protect the privacy of others, some names have been changed and characters conflated. Episode 51. I'm Paul Hardt, and we will be back soon with more stories from Life's Learning Curve. We're clear.